Lusternia, Age of Ascension presents Ask Estarra.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Ask Estarra. We haven't had an episode in a while, but that's because no one has sent in any questions. So just when I thought it was safe to never embarrass myself again in one of these, we received a lengthy set of questions from one of our favorite people.
Greetings. This is my submission to Ask Estarra. First, let me explain who I am. My real name is John, but you probably know me better on the forums as Fred, and you probably know my character best as a certain dwarven janitor named Tully. How big are the gnomes? Are we talking like the D&D gnomes that are like 3 feet halfling sized, or are they smaller and more like brownie sized or whatever? Because it's so hard to tell in the game because of how size works and all that. So I just like an official answer on that so I can figure out in my mind whether my character's standing closely eye to eye to them, or if he's looking down or up if they're standing on a stool or whatever.
A phalang is size 4. A dwarf is size 8. Gnomes would be somewhere in between, a little taller than phalangs but shorter than dwarves. So let's say they're a size 6. As a rule of thumb, each point in the size is about a half a foot, or 15 centimeters. So gnomes would be about 3 feet tall, or maybe about a meter tall.
I know it's meant to be whimsical, but the gnomes celebrate something called the solstice. Now, in Lusternia, I assume there is a real solstice, and I know the solstice is designed like in an out-of-character way to be around Christmas time, Yule time, whatever you believe in, for us. So, what exactly is the solstice to the gnomes? I mean, what solstice is it? Like the solstice of the Aether Bubble, or their homeworld, or what?
That sounds good. I like that solstice of the Aether Bubbles. I mean, of course the gnome solstice is in conjunction with the Aether bodies, and it just happens to coincide with our solstice. So I like that idea, and let's leave it at that.
Do you plan on releasing other books like this? Because I think it's really loved by the player base, and I really like how it times in with big events. So, wondering if you're going to do a sequel to the Elder Wars, like about the Vernal Wars, or if you're going to do some history book that continuously updates like that. Okay.
Alas, I have no plans for more books. I was thinking about writing books about the Vernal Gods, but I'm going to defer on that for now. I may turn to some personal writing projects for my creative outlet. But other than that, I think we'll continue with releasing the Vernal histories through quests and area releases.
There's a lot of undead in Lusternia, and they follow the classic fantasy archetypes that we pretty much start with D&D, all that, with one noticeable exception. I noticed that there are no vampires in Lusternia, and this is like the hugest archetype in the world. I mean, it's like, I understand why people avoid doing halflings, Tolkien and all that stuff, but you seem to be really good on the archetypes, and I was just wondering why there are no vampires, and I'm wondering if, A, it's a surprise coming later, or some kind of classic twist on them, or if it just had to do with the fact that you already had I already had a dark fantasy game called Etola where they're a huge deal, but it just seems strange that no vampires, and I just want to know why.
I want to suck your blood. Mwahaha. You are absolutely right. Itolia is the dark fantasy with vampires, and we do not want to infringe on their theme. However, I will point out that Visconti have some thematic similarities to vampires, as well as the powers of necromancy, which culminates as a lich. So, also, transmology. A practitioner can grow fangs and suck out another person's life force, not to mention the soulless gods and the traitor gods engaged in a form of vampirism. So while we have stayed away from the archetypical vampires, we certainly have borrowed some aspects from vampirism. And we really want our players to look like this.
About the technology level of Lusternia. Now, Lusternia's technology is a little all over the map. I mean, with the Aether waves and Aether news, we have pretty much what we'd call like radio and the internet, I guess. You know, the Tainted Broadcast Center. I've never seen it in character, but I've heard good things about it. The curious thing I have about it is the technology levels. I mean, obviously we have not progressed. You know, there's no fossil fuels yet, but there may be some steam stuff. I'm just wondering if we're thinking about introducing classic, you know, there doesn't seem to be a classic steampunk archetype. Magnagora probably comes the closest, but I'm just curious if that may be an additional thing in the future. I'm just curious where the technology level is, because, you know, Lusternia is not like just the Middle Ages. So I'm just curious where you see the technology being, and specifically what technology does not exist or might not exist. Like the gnomes seem to have the steampunk, classic steampunk technology that we know and love. I'm just curious if we may expand on that in the future.
That's a great question. I've answered this on the forum before, but let me just go through it again. Just keep in mind that most technology in Lusternia is magic-based. So there would be no reason for Lusternia to ever evolve into a high industry or high technology society. There's no reason that Lusternia couldn't develop spells and whatnot to parallel anything found in high industry or high tech today. If you're talking about the level of mechanical knowledge, there are the gnomes and the finks building machines to open gates. There are windmills, clocks. There are various other high magic machines here and there, like the machine on the Arisian Isles. There's also a type of fossil fuel found in Presidio, if you haven't looked that up. So I look at it this way. If your magic can make you fly, there's no reason to develop flying machines. If magic can make you breathe underwater, there's no reason to develop submersibles, or to look at fossil fuel to develop engines when you have magical technology, which is just as advanced and as good as normal technology to pave the way. As for steampunk, I love steampunk, and I do want to perhaps incorporate more steampunk images and themes within Lusternia, and I'm welcome to players helping me out with that. Maybe in new areas or abilities or items or whatnot. But I think we're kind of there. I know there are goggles around, it's artifacts and a few other things that make it steampunk-ish. But I love steampunk. I'd love to see more, and we'll see what the future brings.
What happens when you give money to a mobile that normally doesn't receive money? I'm curious because well, let's just put it this way. If I give money to a mobile, like let's say I'm walking around Magnagora, I feel sorry for Big, I give him like say 5,000 gold. What happens to it? Does the gold stay with the mobile? If the mobile is one of the resetting ones, does it disappear? I mean, if it's a quest one, does it reappear? I'm just curious if, like, someday somebody's going to, or does it wait until somebody comes along, influences and begs, and then suddenly suddenly they're surprised that the beggar's carrying around so much money?
This is a question that only Tully would ask, so let me just answer it for you. If you give gold to a denizen, they will keep that gold until someone begs for it off them, or unless someone kills them, in which case they'll drop the gold. If there's a quest mob that normally takes gold, then that gold will disappear. But otherwise, if you're giving large amounts of gold to denizens, you're giving some lucky person a big windfall the next time they happen to beg off them or happen to kill them. They'll just have 5,000 gold or whatever amount you give.
The planes and spheres, or, the planescape of Lusternia, do we plan on adding additional planes? Because a lot of the planes are structured around the orgs, but there are other planes out there. I know there's a spirit plane, and I know that we have Limbo is pretty much where every other plane exists. I'm just curious if you're planning on expanding the planosphere into other planes. I mean, there's got to be other cosmic planes out there. Well, you know, there's subplanes within planes. I think the term used to be spheres. At least that's what Gary told me a long time ago. But anyway, I'm just curious if you're thinking of expanding them, or if there might be something beyond the astral plane, or cleaned up plane.
New planes will always be tied, or generally be tied, to new cities. So the chances are there will not be any new planes for some time. However, I'm not going to close the door on possible new planes if some fantastic idea comes up in the future. But for right now, there's nothing in the works and nothing planned. Now that said, we are certainly open to expanding aether space and adding new aether bubbles, which kind of is the same thing.
And finally, I have a question for you about skill sets. Do you plan on expanding the core skill set soon? Because, you know, I mean, most people don't realize this, but I don't have any guild skills. I just have my single trade skill, and that's about it. But, you know, I'm just wondering if you might be adding more skill sets in the future that are available to all, because it's just, you know, I'd love to play with new toys, but I'm just curious about it. I mean, I know that things are really org-based around that, so.
The last core skill set we had planned has already been released, and that was Beast Mastery. We were actually very pleased with Beast Mastery, and I think it's one of our most successful and well-loved releases. However, there are no more plans for core skills. There would have to be a really cool idea for a core skill set to move me to add another one. Now keep in mind that the core skill sets generally follow the skill web. I would suggest you take guild skills if you want more skills. Even if you are not in the city or commune, you can still use those skills that don't cost power. In fact, if you are a mercenary warrior, which is a warrior that has taken a tracking skill set as a tertiary skill, then you would never need to use any power, or city power, commune power. So I think that's it. That's a wrap, and thank you for watching, and feel free to submit more questions.